Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Ground Zero Salem, Pat here. Happy to have you. So just a collection update. Nothing fancy, straightforward, whole stack of new acquisitions to talk about. Before I get into that, I got a new phone, so if you notice a change in quality, hopefully an uptick in quality, that is why. Kind of experimenting with a new angle and with the sound levels and whatnot. I've been tooling around with a little bit, and it sounds and looks pretty good to me. My previous setup was pretty elaborate, maybe needlessly so. It was like a microphone and a mixer and a webcam that I all kind of had to tweak a lot of stuff to get the results I wanted, sometimes with varying results that weren't always so good. So any ideas or thoughts on the quality, positive or negative, if you want to throw me a comment, that's cool. Before I get into the update, we're listening to Arid Ruins' Epicurean Mass from 2003 on Psychedumelic Records. I was reminded of this because I heard through the grapevine these guys have a new record out, and this is an absolute banger. I like the fact that it's not straight up traditional doom, it's not straight up, certainly not funeral doom, it's not epic, it's a little bit too far in one direction, like a little too dirgy to be traditional, a little bit too heavy to be stoner, you know, that kind of thing. It's its own sort of doom metal, and I really dig that about it. Great songwriting too. Certain elements of it really, not this song that's playing in the background. There's another song that really reminds me a lot of Forest of Equilibrium, which is my favorite doom metal record by Cathedral. So great stuff. Check it out if you haven't. It'll be spinning in the background. I have tested this out, and I'm pretty happy with the audio, being able to hear me and the music, so that should be cool. Where to start? Well, got a bunch of stuff in from a bunch of different distros. Lots of cheap stuff. All this was like pretty budget, affordable stuff, a lot of holes that I wanted to fill. There's a couple of new releases that I picked up in the wild. Shout out to America's Hardcore Fest. It was a good time. Caught Mind Force, and they were excellent. Distroing there was a Preserving Hardcore distro, who I picked up some stuff through mail order. I bought one CD there because at that point I was done spending any more money on music. I've kind of cut myself off, at least through the holiday, but I hit up a bunch of sales from the aforementioned distro, Preserving Hardcore, State of Mind Recordings, which is another primarily hardcore distro that has a lot of great affordable CDs. Hit up deepdiscount.com. Lots of metal on that. It's just kind of a liquidator, but I found a bunch of stuff that I've been curious about or wanting from, like, you know, the past years, about 10 years ago up to about 2016. Some cool titles for like $5. Always an option. I always forget about Deep Discount, but they have some gems if you dig. And also Tankcrimes had a sale. Great. They've been doing a lot of death metal lately, but more of a traditionally hardcore label previous to that from California. $5 LPs. Got a few gifts from Jason Hook, which I'm excited about. A couple of 7 inches I'm going to talk about. And a few other odds and ends. So let's kick it off with probably an album of the year for me. If I were to do a categorized sort of awards ceremony, Grammy kind of deal under crusty type of hardcore, this would be album of the year for sure for me. This is Wolfbrigade's The Enemy Reality. I've liked these guys for a long time, since they were called Wolfpack. All Day Hell is a favorite record of mine. I picked it up when it dropped, which was, I think, 99 or so. Strong roots in Swedish hardcore. At one point shared members with Anti-C-Mex or ex-members of Anti-C-Mex, and that style of vocal cadence is still very present here, that sort of shouted thing going on. There's really something on here for a wide range of people, a wide cross-section of an audience. The disc rockers will love it. It's got that strong kind of discharge, rhythmic approach. There's a good amount of like Motorhead, Venom, Tank, New Wave of British heavy metal sort of stuff going on. Beautiful riffs, very catchy rock and roll style riffing. A little bit of maybe the Stockholm kind of side of Swedish death metal, but the more melodic leanings of it, you know. It just rocks. It's face melting punk rock and roll with a healthy dose of metal, and I don't really know what else to say other than that. It's awesome. That came out on Southern Lord just a couple of weeks ago, I think. Got a best of. Here Lies Necrophagia, 35 years of death metal. So I'm a big nut for Seasons of the Dead. Absolute banger of a groundbreaking death metal record. I did at one point own a lot of their post Seasons of the Dead stuff. I had Harvest Ritual, Black Blood Vomitorium, a couple of others. And I liked them at the time, but it wasn't enough to warrant me holding on to them when I needed to purge a bunch of my collection for money when I was broke as a student. And upon revisiting, I think this compilation's done a really good job of taking the strongest tracks from Killjoy's stuff after Seasons of the Dead when he reformed for that brief period where he was working with Phil Anselmo. Although his approach to songwriting got a little bit more cleaned up and had more competent musicianship, I think he kept that layer of horror and filth and slight buzziness and distortion and claustrophobia all over everything. The songwriting approach kind of varies from album to album. Some of the songs on Harvest Ritual are super chuggy, almost kind of like hardcore moshy, which is kind of funny. I don't think that was the intended effect, but I like it for that reason. But yeah, this is a great collection. Whoever put it together did a really good job of selecting some really strong tracks from all of the Necrophagia stuff, including Seasons of the Dead. That's on here too. It sounds great. There's good extensive liner notes. Up next, we got Annihilator's Alice in Hell. Thrash record from 1990. If you're a fan of 80s and I guess in this case early 90s thrash, you know this stuff. Kind of funny to think of this as a 1990 record, by the way. It sounds very 85, 86. I had one of those Hard and Heavy compilations, video compilations on cassette, on VHS rather. I think I still do actually, somewhere in the cabinets back here, that had tons of music videos compiled, and I always kind of goofed on the music video for Alice in Hell. And the song, it's not a bad song, but it is definitely some metal cheese going on there. And it kind of caused me to low rate this record and not really check it out for years. After spinning it a bunch of times recently digitally, the faster songs are great. You know, right in between kind of speed metal and thrash metal, if you want to define speed metal as like a traditionally heavy metal but faster kind of genre. Those genres have always been kind of amorphous to me, but it's really good. It's just technical enough to be thrash. It's pretty ripping, lighter side of thrash with kind of shrieky sung vocals, not unlike Bobby Blitz or that kind of thing. Blessed Death, you know, that vocal approach. Up next, Mangled Torsos with Drawings of the Dead. Another one brought to my attention from the lovely High Defamation podcast. This is also a cool kind of crossroads of styles. German band. This came out in '93, reissue from a couple years ago on Memento Mori. Interesting melding of styles. You got sort of a post-carcass gore grind kind of gurgly component to it, with enough blasting to keep you interested, but there's also some great mid-paced heavy riffing, almost leans into doom, death doom at certain points, and there is some really gorgeous, like, classic guitar work on this, acoustic guitar work that's sort of classically inspired. Yeah, it's weirdly progressive and also kind of gore grind at the same time. I really like it a lot. Big shout out to Eric for bringing that to my attention. Next up, we got Macabre Omen with The Ancient Returns. 2004, first full length by this Greek black metal band, a band that had been around since the early 90s and didn't get around to releasing a full length until 10 years later. Did a bunch of splits and demos and stuff. It's got that great inherently Greek sense of melody and melancholy to it, but also there's a very big, like, We Like Vikings kind of thing going on with it as well. I'd say if you like, you know, the Nordland stuff by Bathory, or any of that kind of more strummy kind of Viking stuff, Hades is what I was trying to think of right there. I'd say this is up your alley. There's really shrieky, kind of almost suicidal, depressive black metal kind of vocals to it, which take a little getting used to, but they grew on me after a while, we'll say. It's nice embossed packaging here on this digipack. Cool logo, like that. Came out on, I think it's Van Records. It was a reissue, I think maybe 4 years ago. I don't remember what the original label was, but who cares? That was a deep discount purchase as well, by the way. And also found on deep discount was Catheter, Southwestern Doom Violence on Self-Made God. came out in 2014, I think. Nice digipack there. Grind band from the Southwest. I'm trying to remember, I think Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. I really liked their first full length back in the day when I was listening to tons of crust and grind and power violence. This holds up well. It's got really strong production on it. Mostly kind of high shrieky vocals. I'm not hearing so much of the doom in it. There's some slower parts that kind of bring to mind Dystopia, if you're familiar with them, and that's cool. But most of this is short, quick, to the point grindcore shit. A little bit of power violence, kind of punk leaning attitude in there as well. And then we've got Bombs of Hades, Through the Dark Past, a compilation of singles and other oddities. It's like $4.30. Deep discount, gotta love it. Came out on Pulverized record. Bombs of Hades, Swedish death metal worship, kind of that revival that was so hot about 10 years ago, bringing to mind, for me, like a lot of stuff that came out on the now defunct Detest records. I believe one of the 7 inches on this was on Detest, actually. This is meat and potatoes Swedish death metal. If you like Left Hand Path, like an ever-flowing stream, it's certainly along those lines with the guitar tone and the vocal style. A little bit more turned towards punk, though. There's a little bit more of that already prevalent in Swedish death metal D-beat kind of thing going on, but a lot of the fat is trimmed in the songwriting style. Shorter songs, a little bit more punkish. Very cool. Lots of fun covers on this. They do a Zeke cover, Evil Dead, I'll Be Your Sister by Motorhead, great Motorhead song. A Loud Pipes cover, Day Man Lost by Carnage. All really cool interpretations of the originals, so fun one to check out. This was a gift. Crown Beheaded, demo EP, Eternal Abyss of Damnation. Mr. Apollyon, the vocalist for Blaspherian on this CD that I just talked about, sent me this gratis. Very much appreciated. Cool, blasphemous, very fast death metal. This came out about 4 years ago, I think. Take a look here. 2012, this came out. Just 4 songs. Certainly, if you're into, Morbid Angel and Incantation, it's somewhere in that vein, but much, much faster. Very kind of blast beat driven, sort of satanic death metal stuff. Very cool. I picked this up from Preserving Hardcore at their distro at the show there at America's Hardcore Festival. Just the one purchase. Had a couple of bucks in my pocket. This was a hole to fill. Fear Factory, Soul of a New Machine. Came out on Roadrunner back in 93, I think. 92. I remember when this came out. I actually never owned this as a young death metal pup. I had At Death's Door 2, and I remember hearing the track was Martyr and being blown away by how different it was. This is when Fear Factory were far more death metal, growly vocals and all that, but with a strong industrial bent. And I've always liked this record, I've just never owned it. Pretty much the only thing I liked by Fear Factory. I remember when remanufacture, whatever the fuck, the second record, when that came out, and buying it and being like, this sounds like Pantera and Machine Head, 2 bands I'm not into, but this shit is great. And the only record by this band that sounds like this, other than I think they did a remix EP with some of the songs. So I've been on this Bloodlet kick, and just been kind of buying up everything they've done to a certain point. I got their 3rd record, their comeback record from 2002. They'd been defunct for 4 years at that point, which back then seemed like a very long time. This is their 3rd LP on Victory, 3 Humid Nights in the Cypress Trees. Yeah, I remember hearing this briefly when they came back around. Everybody was excited when they started playing shows again. And they were great live then, too. I went to see them a bunch of times when they reformed. I remember hearing this briefly and being like, whoa, those clean vocals, I don't think I can hang. And my opinion is pretty much the same. Revisiting this, weird clean vocals. A lot of people kind of low rate them as like nu metal. I wouldn't say that, but there's just something about it that doesn't sit well with me. I should give this a couple more listens to really absorb it. Very, very big departure from their records previous. The Seraphim Fall, I think, was the last one. So, unfortunately, yeah, I don't know. I'll listen to it some more, but my nostalgia kick with Bloodlet ends here, and I can definitely see where they're going with the new tracks, because it's pretty much in the same style vocally. Still abrasive vocals, by the way, but, you know, maybe not as much. Less inhuman. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Another hardcore label here. Revelation Records put out this Fall Silent record. Drunken Violence. I think this was late 90s sometime. 2002. Okay, a little bit later than I thought. They talked about this on a podcast recently and just how weird this record is, how odd this band's musical approach was. There's a strong kind of 90s metallic hardcore thing going on for the slow parts. Some kind of weird singy bits as well, but then it's interspersed with all kinds of like face-ripping crossover thrash that brings to mind Slayer, Nuclear Assault. If you want to go by newer bands, maybe Municipal Waste a little bit. Fast spat vocals during all those fast passages. And it's cool, but man, was this band all over the place. Very interesting. Band was from Reno, Nevada. I always forgot if it was Reno or Salt Lake, but they're from Reno. We're from Reno. And I mean, they played with kind of harder, moshier bands, but they also played with a lot of the 625 thrash and power violence bands. I think they were one of the few bands at the time that could kind of play to both audiences, which was interesting. I'm just going to show you the cover art again. That's some wild shit. It's a cowboy with his gun resting in some pubic bones there. He's got his butt right in the pubic synthesis. Very odd. But a cool listen. I actually had a couple of beverages and listened to the whole thing on headphones, and I really, really enjoyed it. I was certainly put off by it. It's kind of funny because I think I got it around the same time I heard that Bloodlet record, and I remember being equally put off by both, but upon a revisit, the Fall Silent is way better to me, to my ears. Also finally found a copy of Stormblast by Dimmu Borgir, the original version, not the re-recorded version. You know, I'm getting into all this Norwegian black metal starter pack stuff very late in life, as you know. And this is a great record. I'm not sure if I like it more or less than For All Tid. I know Matt Jones talked about kind of going back and forth between the first three. Oddly, I actually was really into the third one, Enthroned Darkness Triumphant, when that came out, but I never explored into the back catalog. It's cool. It's moody. Definitely symphonic, of course. Very strong, loud keyboards. A lot of mid-paced riffing. There's some faster stuff on there as well. Interesting use of what sounds to be like almost like straight up piano, not just like synthy keyboards as well. So yeah, cool to visit. I actually just took a walk in below freezing temperatures around here in Salem to make a run to the post office, and it's certainly a good soundtrack to walk around to face-numbing cold to. Next up, a couple of 7 inches from Mr. Hook, passed off to me at that fest. High Command, a band from Worcester that I've been hearing tons about. Local band that's made it big lately. There's a LP they put out on Southern Lord this year. This is just a 7-inch, The Primordial Void. Can't read the name of the label because I'm blind these days, but I'll put a caption. Just 2 songs, super enjoyable, reminds me of early Power Trip. That's not a bad thing. Maybe the first Power Trip record. Thrashy, hardcore, crossover kind of stuff. Very riffy, competent musicianship. You know, Slayer and some NYHC kind of touches here and there. A little bit more grimy and blackened than all of the things I just mentioned, I'd say. There's a little bit of kind of reverby stuff going on with the vocals. It seems a little like dirtier and meaner. I'm very curious to hear that full length that just came out on Southern Lord. I'm sure it's good. I've heard nothing but good things about it. I know that Amanda, my better half, who you met just recently, has ordered it, so that'll be cool to check out. Next up, Under Attack, Through the Blade. This came out on Iron Lung. This is a straightforward, stripped-down hardcore featuring Mark Telfian, who's a guitarist that's been in a ton of noteworthy DIY hardcore bands throughout the years, including Devoid of Faith and many, many others. Limp Wrist, lots of other shit I'm forgetting right now. Weird, like, die-cut chunk. I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, or what that's supposed to be. But 6 songs on a 7-inch, quick and to the point. Straightforward riffing, fast but not blasting fast. Hardcore stuff. Kind of screamy vocals. Good, solid hardcore, no complaints. Cool layout. That sort of black with all the razor blades there. Maybe that's supposed to be like a razor blade chunk. I don't know. Just got this in the mail. Haven't listened to it yet, but I really like the demos. This is the Subversive Rite LP, Songs for the End Times. I gotta give huge props to the artist who thought of the Reaper Riot Cop. Why that hasn't been utilized yet, why nobody had thought of that yet for like a punk band, I don't know. But it's such a great image. Yeah, this band sounds a lot like the Sacrilege demo, Sacrilege UK, kind of metallic D beats, fierce vocals, not all too different from Tam's. I can't wait to hear this properly on the old vinyl player, my turntable vinyl player. It's really good. The demos were excellent. I've listened to it on YouTube, and the full length is even better. You know, often demos are better than the full length, but in this case, the full length is definitely superior. Next up, all right, coming from the Tankcrimes sale, we got the Brainoil debut. Originally came out on Life is Abuse, which was the dude from Dystopia's label back in 2003. Leaning back, getting used to this new setup, give myself a stretch. This is sludge, very enjoyable sludge. I'm kind of hit or miss with a lot of sludge stuff. I'm good with like one I Hate God album, one Crowbar album, you know. But this, you can tell it's primarily punks playing it. I think a dude from Destroy is in this lineup. Cybernate Scabies, I think, is the guitarist or something. At any rate, like, they don't waste any time. You know, they shit and get off the pot as far as like getting to good punchy riffs, dynamic parts. I mean, I know it's probably kind of blasphemous to say this, but I'd rather throw this on than most I Hate God records most of the time. Giving it a lot of spins. I don't know if... Oh yeah, it comes on a nice color. Cool bone color artwork from the front on the center label with this conjoined twin center label on the other side. Very cool. Peligro Social next. Catchy anthemic punk, all sung in Spanish. Slight kind of rock and roll and almost surfy vibes here and there with it. This band was around in the mid-2000s. This came out in 2006. It was re-released by Tankcrimes 2014, something like that. I find myself kind of singing along to the songs in my head all the time, which is kind of funny because I don't speak Spanish, other than a few key phrases. Red vinyl. If I'm not mistaken, there are so many bands that I saw at this fest, but I believe I saw these guys at a Chaos and Chaos Fest over 10 years ago, and they were really good live. If you want to get nerdy with featuring members of stuff, I was just looking it up on Discogs. There's a guy from Acephalix in this band, which is interesting. At some point, I'm not sure if it's a guy that's currently in their lineup or not, but, you know, death metal, anthemic punk, it all bleeds over. Fuck You Pay Me, Dumb Down, featuring the one and only national treasure, Tony Erba. Nice little tribute to Jim Kanya there on the bottom. He was one of Erba's best friends. Cleveland band, fucking ripping hardcore with a strong rock and roll underbelly to it. I love Fuck You Pay Me. I like most bands that Erba's been involved with. And I might just be hearing this because I know of the man's taste, but he almost sings like it's a wrestling promo. Like he's one of those wrestlers freaking out, calling out, you know, calling out the ref that's backstabbed him or the tag team he has a feud with. There's just something about how commanding the guy's vocal style is that I just love. Kind of nasally, kind of angry. He's just like one of those dudes like Tesco V or Jeff Clayton from Anti-Scene that just has an undeniable vocal presence that, to my ears, they could be singing over somebody farting into a snare drum and I'd still fucking love it. Coming up next, coming in hot, we have Deny the Cross with Alpha Ghoul. Look at that cover art. Mark McCoy cover art there. If you're not familiar with Mark McCoy, he runs Youth Attack Records, has done some really, really cool artwork for bands for a while now. Did Trumpeting Ecstasy by Full of Hell, the new Sect record, plenty of other shit. I particularly like this because it's called Alpha Ghoul and it's like looks like a demonic priest with like ray of heaven coming down on him. Very, very crazy shit. So this is like a kind of a power violence super group. You got Dave Whitty on drums. Oh, And I forgot to mention, Dave Whitty played on that Under Attack record. Busy guy, great drummer. Neither record he's showing off his crazy blast-laden, very proficient grindcore kind of stuff, which is cool to see him kind of rein it in. As an aside, I watched that Slave to the Grind documentary a month or two ago, and he was mentioning that he has tendinitis really bad, which is no surprise, so that's probably why he's doing a little bit more like basic kind of drum styles and all the projects that he's in. He's been in Municipal Waste for a hot minute right now, probably over 10 years now, come to think of it. But also in this band is Carlos Ramirez of Black Army Jacket, the guy from, the guitarist from Spaz, I think, Dan Lactose, I knew he had like a kind of a goofy name, and Frank Ripple, who was in Agents of Satan. So what we have here is basically power violence, fast hardcore. It's got that kind of fuzzy, noodling sort of bass thing that's prevalent in that genre. But there's something very blackened and scary and unholy about the general vibe and atmosphere of it that is very fucking cool. I never heard about this when it came out. It came out about 2 or 3 years ago, 2016, coming up on 4 years ago. Completely missed my radar, but it's certainly worthy of a spin if you haven't checked it out yet. If I didn't, let's show off the vinyl here. So cool center labels, and my copy came on this awesome half and half clear and black. Looks fantastic. This was a freebie thrown in by Tankcrimes, and I did actually listen to this because it was like 4 LPs for $20. This is Vivisick, Nuked Identity. I actually spun this and was like, nah, I don't want that as part of the order, but they threw it in anyway. It's a little dinged and dented. It's not bad. It's Japanese hardcore stuff. It's got that interesting combination of influences that you're probably only going to get in Japan. It has a certain like grindy, shrieky, shrill vocal approach, but there's also like anthemic, like almost kind of poppy punk choruses. It's not bad, but it reminds me almost of that other Japanese band Paintbox, but not as fun to listen to. I don't hate it, you know. I'll spin it another couple times, whatever. The best part though is there's a song on it called "Why Must I Grab My Penis?" That's a great question. All right, another Triple B release. It's been just a year for Triple B as far as hardcore goes. I actually intended to talk about this during the episode with Amanda, and I don't know why, it just kind of disappeared into my stack and I skipped it somehow. But this is The Wild Side with Who the Hell is The Wild Side? Well, I'll tell you. They are a fucking ruling hardcore band from Niagara Falls, New York. If you like Warzone, you'll like Wild Side. If you like that early to mid 2000s locking out mental righteous jams kind of thing, you'll like Wild Side. A lot of mid-pace to fast kind of New York inspired hardcore stuff, lots of bounce, lots of swagger, you know, those kind of talk yelled vocals that only Ray B's could pull off back in the day, but this guy does a fine job of kind of evoking. I will say that the main thing that kind of sets this apart from a lot of hardcore that's of this kind of subgenre is a really, really cool approach to guitar playing. There are some ripping, like sleazy guitar solos on this that are almost kind of like cock rock, but are awesome. Dude who's playing guitar is a fucking shredder. And you would hear that a little bit with Warzone, of course, and a lot of other bands, there'd be little solos here and there, but this dude just bangs it out and shreds the solos, which sounds awesome with just this attitude-laden kind of, you know, swagged out hardcore shit. Going in a completely different direction. This was a nice surprise. I thought this was coming on CD, and it was actually an LP that I ended up with for $5, I think, from the deep discount order. This is Pandemonium 3, Chaos and Confusion. I've heard a little bit about this band over the years. I remember when this shit came out and how it was really weird. I do remember Ben talking about one of these records, possibly this one. This came out on Relapse, or was reissued on Relapse 2015, originally came out in 96. Yeah, Dan Swano project. Very odd. I only listened to this a couple times so far. It's cool. Very heavy, very deep growled vocals, but it has almost like a free jazz approach to the music in it. There's a lot of added instrumentation that's very wacky. It's fun. You know, it's almost kind of like proggy free jazz and spirit, like death metal stuff, which is cool. You know, just 4 songs, but they're all pretty lengthy. Really takes you on a psychedelic journey, but with death growls. Cool. Into it. Listen to it again. Haven't even cracked this open yet because I'm very familiar with this and I own it on several formats, but I didn't have a nice reissue copy of Bloodlet's Entheogen. This is their first full length that originally came out on Victory. I have a vinyl pressing of it, originally from '96 when it came out, and it's truncated. There's songs that aren't on the full length on the LP that are on the CD. So A389 sadly just shuttered its doors a year or so ago. Dom from Integrity's label did a proper reissue of this with 2 LPs, 45 RPM. I'm not sure what color variant I got, but this was a steal. I got it, I think, from Preserving Hardcore or maybe State of Mind. I can't remember which, but I was looking it up on Discogs and all the copies of this are like at least $25 and I got it for 10, which is great. But it's that great sludgy hardcore that I love from Bloodlet. Those desperate, dry, tortured vocals, weird grooves, weird chord progressions, you know, a lot of interesting bass work with fretless bass and stuff. Pairing with that nicely, I didn't even know that this existed until I came across it in the distro, but it's a Bloodlet live radio set from WFMU right before the previous record just came out. There's songs from Entheogen on it, as well as an unreleased track, which is very cool to hear. They sound great on this. It's this great live sound. You can hear certain things in the songwriting that are kind of muted on the studio recordings, which is really cool. This copy came on orange. And it's relatively short, you know, it's a radio set. I think it's 6 or 7 songs. But it's also a very worthwhile listen. This was $6 through that distro, so. And pretty sure that was State of Mind recording, so check them out. State of Mind and Preserving Hardcore have a lot of great stuff. If you're looking to pick up some hardcore with your metal or vice versa, not a bad place to go. Lots of good prices on CDs, so I'll leave links. Next up, 108. Threefold Misery. So 108, it's funny because later on in life, I'm giving all these hardcore bands that I wasn't really into in the late 90s a chance. Like for instance, like what dude that's 41 years old gets into Overcast in 2019, you know? But those were bands that were around in the late 90s and playing a lot of shows when my interest in a lot of metallic stuff, especially metallic hardcore, was kind of waning. And I remember seeing them live and being pretty impressed, but being more into like the Casualties and like Devoid of Faith and stuff that was more in the DIY punk crust spectrum at the time. And I revisited 108 a little bit earlier this year. I got like a early discography 2 CD deal, and I saw this for cheap on State of Mind. That was included on the discography, but this is a nice vinyl pressing of Threefold Misery, which I think second or third LP, I can't remember. I did have Holy Name at one point, and back then I didn't like it. Revisiting it in that CD set, it's great. This is probably their heaviest recording in terms of just tone and everything. Probably their most well-recorded earlier record too. You know, they had this really desperate, kind of violent sort of hardcore sound. They had enough fast to probably appease the old school hardcore dudes at the time, but there was kind of a lot of that, I'd say like Inside Out, which I mean featured the guitarist Vic. Inside Out, kind of more slow, punishing 90s hardcore thing going on with 108. And this, a lot of people say is their best record. I'm kind of apt to agree, but I need to really listen to them more to really make that judgment. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the update. Ended up being a bit lengthy, but you know, sometimes I like that. I feel like the people, being you, the proletariat, the populace, enjoys my lengthier updates as well. I hope all of you have a great weekend, and I'll be back soon. Probably going to talk about some album of the year stuff, probably going to cave to that, but going to try to do it at least in a non-standard way so it's not too boring. Talk to you later. Peace.